Hey, I'm Adam from Buzzy, and I wanted to give you an overview of what we're doing and why we think Buzzy is going to revolutionize application development going forward. So creating an application is hard. You could start with an idea on the left-hand side, and you need to cross this massive chasm to get your applications live. So whether they're native applications or Android, iOS, or web applications. And it's just not easy. And if we had a look at a simplified view, and you'll see how complex this is even in a simplified view, you start off with your concept and planning stage, your idea generation. You've got, obviously, you need to manage the project. You then get into the design phase. You go through things like UX, you're developing wireframes, clickable prototypes, and then you need to do your UI design, high fidelity, and then you need to go through this painful design to developer handoff. And we know from speaking to tons of different customers and users out there that that's a real painful process. And then the development process starts. You've got the front-end development, all your front-end tech, your HTML, JavaScript, whether you're doing native applications using the technology there. Then you've got your back-end development. You need to write the business logic, and then you've got all the integration work. And then when you're ready to actually test it, you need to make sure that the application does what you want and it's robust and it works as planned. And also you need to make sure things like security and performance are in check. And then at some point, once you've iterated enough around that cycle, then you need to get it deployed. So either as a web application or as mobile, so iOS, Android, and that. And that kind of just gets you the first version. And once you get to that stage, you're then up for your post-launch where you're dealing with stuff like, making sure that you're maintaining it. The application's always going to be changing, even if it's just fixing bugs and dealing with things like operating system changes and new features and that as, you constantly are developing your application. So where does, where are the real painful bits? We know, as I mentioned before, from speaking to a ton of folk, that design to develop a handover is really complex and slow. And the more you iterate, the better your application gets, but the more you iterate, the more expensive and painful it becomes as well. So it gets multiplied with each iteration. And then there's significant cost in maintaining that, what might be tens or hundreds of thousands of lines of code and making sure that it constantly works with new, like I said, new operating system upgrades and so on. So the net result is it's really slow and expensive. So if we look at the promise of AI, a lot of people think that you can go from an idea and you've got AI, just wave the magic AI wand and then you can get an application that's live in the App Store. Unfortunately, it's not as simple as that. It's a lot more complex, and there's a couple of challenges over there. So let's look at that. So if you look at the complexity of a complete application, not just a little bit of it, there could be tens or hundreds of thousands of lines of code representing the requirements, the user interface, all those things coming together. And it's just very hard for the AI to work out and really get that right. So you end up, when you try and deal with a mass requirement or massive data like that, AI just chokes. It can't deal with it. And it's also non-deterministic. That means every time even if you give it the same question, day in, day out, you'll probably get different results out of that. So it's not consistent. And that really makes it really tough to come up with reliable, secure, and performant solutions at the application level. And then let's say you do actually develop a first version and you want to hand that over to the development team who's now going to enhance it and maintain it. And there's just tens or hundreds of thousands of lines of code. Nobody's ever seen that code. And it's a big, massive ask that is probably going to fail, expecting the development team to take that code and look at maintaining that and enhancing it going forward. So they just can't trust that code. Nobody knows exactly what it does. And it's really hard. So that's why today you see AI being used as a co-pilot in small little chunks of code. I know this from development. We use AI in our development all the time. And we can apply it to small little chunks. So usually functions at a time, maybe a group of functions if you want to sort of go out on the edge, but never a full application. And that's why that's the norm. So our goal is to be able to use AI to get you to allow you to create the entire application. And we allow you to go through these three phases with developing your app. So first of all, you can kickstart your application, go from a prompt to a full working application literally in a matter of minutes. Might not be perfect, but you can literally get to the full stack working application that you can give to a user and get feedback in a matter of minutes. Then if you hit barriers with what you could produce with AI, then you can go to the next phase, which is enhance. So you can use a tool like Figma, high fidelity control over the user interface, the look and feel, add, remove screens, functions, components, and that all from within Figma without having to write any code. So a designer can do this and just skip over that painful design to dev handover for as much of the code as possible. There's still probably going to be little bits of code that you need to write, and that's where the third level comes in. So level 3 is extending with code. Two key areas at the front end: you can write code widgets with Buzzy, and then so they might be front end functionality that you couldn't create with either the AI or within Figma, so you can extend that code. And then you might also do back-end integration. So you might be calling external APIs or having server-side code that does integration, and we've got an API that you can come back in. So you can extend with it. Now Figma becomes like once you move from that initial Kickstart phase to Figma, Figma becomes like your code that's in control of the designer. You have to go through that anyway. So the result is you can create web and mobile applications in a fraction of the time at a fraction of the cost with a fraction of the team and skill. So if we look at this across that life cycle that we looked at before, you can get significant, potentially up to 80%, depending on the phase, reduction in time, cost, and code for each one of those phases, because that gets taken off the table for you by Buzzy, and we use AI to be able to do that. So creating an application just got a whole lot easier with Buzzy. You can get that idea, you can turn it into that full stack working application, and we've got a way for you to enhance and extend that as well. Thanks a lot for watching. Please go give Buzzy a try today. We'd love to hear from you. If you need help, we can connect you with one of our partners. Thanks again, and look forward to seeing what you create.